Alright people, so let's resume our current affairs lecture series. Now I know there has been a delay of couple of days, but let me promise this to you, we won't miss out on any day's current affairs, okay? So yes, there has been some delay, but we will cover all current affairs. Now today we are going to cover current affairs from 20th of August. So all the important news items that featured in that day's newspaper shall be covered in today's lecture, okay? So without further delay, let's straight away dive into the lecture. Let's take a look at the list of topics also that we'll cover. So daily current affairs, 20th of August, and here are the topics. Number one, well, we are going to conduct caste census. This is the first time since, well, 2011, and before that 1931, that caste census would be conducted. So there are certain issues with that. We'll talk about this. Then we'll talk about Afghanistan's Independence Day. Why is it celebrated? Why that particular day has been chosen? Okay, because it involves some modern history portion. So we'll talk about this. Then we'll talk about why exam cancellation is problematic, because recently Jharkhand SSC exam was cancelled by the government because of demand from student protesters, but High Court has put a stay order on that. Okay, so well, we have to talk about this also, why this is problematic. Blanket cancellation of exams is not right. Okay, so these are the three news items that we shall zero in our attention on. So let's start discussing them one by one, starting with topic number one, and that is Caste Census 2026. Now you see, conducting census, which is counting of India's population every 10 years, was an exercise that was started during the British rule. But after India got independence, well, that exercise continued. There was just one break, and that was because of COVID. Okay, so the previous census was in 2011, and now we are conducting a fresh census. Because of COVID, we couldn't conduct this exercise on 2021. Now remember this part. Up till 1931, the British also used to count caste members. Okay, so Britishers, along with their normal census, they also used to conduct caste census as well, counting the number of people in one particular caste. But that practice was discontinued after India became independent, because back then, well, our freedom fighters, our nationalist leaders thought that this would sow in more divisions. Okay, there would be more divisions because of caste census. But in 2011, due to developmental needs, the government decided to conduct a caste census. That was socio-economic caste census. But, well, the data of that was never revealed because there were certain problems. Now, in 2026, we are conducting this exercise afresh. But again, there are some problems. So what are those problems? Let's talk about this, okay? So caste census 2026. So Registrar General of India has decided to adopt an open-ended question format rather than pre-coded drop-down menu of notified castes for caste enumeration phase. Okay, so caste census is going on, and in the previous caste censuses, whether it's 1931 or 2011, well, the officials used to go to every house and used to ask people an open-ended question: what is your caste? It was an open-ended question. Now, open-ended questions have certain problems. This is known as self-declaration. This has various problems. We'll talk about those problems. Instead, people are advising the government to follow, well, a closed approach, okay, drop-down approach. You give them multiple choices. That do you belong to this caste, this caste, this caste, okay? Don't make it that subjective, because open-ended self-declaration has various problems. Instead, you should have a drop-down methodology that we have these lists. Choose your caste from this list. Okay, this is a better approach. Now, why we'll talk about this? While open-ended self-declaration captures subjective social identities, historical and empirical precedents in 1931 and 2011 demonstrate that this method generates fragmented, noisy, and practically unusable data. Now, why? Okay, so if we compare the two approaches, okay, predetermined drop-down method and open-ended self-declaration method. So here's the thing. Well, in open-ended, let's talk about the open-ended thing. It captures fluid, localized, and emerging identities. Okay. Now, I'll give you an example. Let's suppose there is this surname called Verma. Now, Verma in some states is an OBC caste. In some states, it's Kshatriya. Okay. So there are so many variations. If you give people open-ended choice, well, they will give their answer according to those regional variations, and that takes you nowhere. Okay, so it captures localized subjective identities, but that's a problem. In predetermined, it's a standardized against notified SC, ST, OBC list. So we have these lists. You are asked to choose from one. Okay, causes severe data fragmentation. Okay, minimizes error rate. In predetermined, there are no errors. I mean, there will be errors, but it minimizes that. Right? This is a very important thing. Now, if we talk about the history of caste censuses or censuses in India, so 1931 was the last census that was caste based. Okay, 1941 census was not caste based, though it was under British rule. The British did count castes, but it was not done because World War II was there. I mean, the government did not have, British government did not have that many resources, so they avoided this. 1951, the Nehruvian policy decided that we would end caste debate. Okay, we would only count SCs and STs, and we won't count other castes because that would bring in divisions in India. Okay. In 2011, well, we started with caste census, but again, it was an open-ended and there were problems. And now again, we are following open-ended approach, okay, which will generate more problems. Though Bihar and Telangana conducted their own state level surveys and they followed closed approach, not open-ended, closed. And their surveys are very good as far as the data quality is concerned. So nationally also, we should follow the examples of Bihar and Telangana. Right? This is really important. Now, certain key facts that we should know. 1931 baseline. 1931 census was the last comprehensive once in 10-year decennial census that tabulated caste data across population. Okay. Post-independence shift. Guided by the ideals of secularism, equality, nation building, Jawaharlal Nehru government discontinued general caste census. Okay, they discontinued with this practice. But in 2011, this was started. But again, remember, it's an open-ended thing. Now, I've told you the problems with open-ended. Let's talk about them again. Pitfalls with open-ended enumeration. Surname ambiguity. The example I cited of Verma. Okay, there are so many other examples. There is surname ambiguity. Then there is synonymous interchangeable identifiers. Sometimes some community identifies themselves as Rajputs. Then Kshatriyas also at other times, because mostly they are similar. Okay. Rajput, Kshatriya, there is this dichotomy. Are they distinct or are they same? There are so many questions and people generally omit this. Then cross-regional meaning shifts. Sometimes there are pronunciation related issues. Okay, I mean, and pronunciation changes the meaning of the caste. These are some of the issues. Therefore, we shouldn't keep it subjective. Okay, this is the thing. Now, there is a proper table by table comparison. Okay, this is open-ended. This is drop-down. And this is the model followed by Bihar, hybrid. Advantages, disadvantages, data, error rate, all of this is given in your notes. This table is given in your notes. So do check it out. Okay, make sense? And yes, what should be the way forward? We should adopt a standardized taxonomy, incorporate no caste and no religion option also. Some people, I'm sorry, do not identify with any caste. You should allow them to do that also. Okay, don't force people to identify with one caste or the other. Don't do this. Then interstate expert standardization committee. There should be a committee that should standardize various Varna castes and focus on subcategorization also. Because within SCs, there are various castes or subcastes which are better off than others. So there should be subcategorization and welfare benefits should be awarded according to that. This should be done ASAP. Right? That's about it. Clear? Now let's quickly shift our focus to next news item, and that is Afghanistan's Independence Day. Okay. Now the thing is that Afghanistan also celebrates its Independence Day and there is a story behind it. Okay. Now we need to know, why does Afghanistan celebrate its Independence Day? The British never occupied Afghanistan properly. Then why do they celebrate their Independence Day? And knowing about this story would also help you have some knowledge about modern history of India, the British rule in India. Okay. And questions can be asked. Therefore, we are covering this topic, right? So let's talk about it very quickly. So Afghanistan's Independence Day. Now to understand this thing, you need to analyze this map also during the times of British India. Okay. Now take a look over this. This is, well, the official border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. But you all know that when British India was ruling over this subcontinent, this was part of British India, right? And this was Afghanistan. Now remember this, well, the Britishers never wanted to control Afghanistan directly, but they wanted to create a buffer state because they always feared that Russia would invade and attack the Britishers from here. Okay, so they wanted to keep a friendly regime in Afghanistan. They never controlled it directly, but they subdued them and somehow they created a buffer state. But what happened? Eventually, yes, in that buffer state, what they said was that you have internal autonomy. You're autonomous internally. The king is the autonomous person. The king would rule Afghanistan. But your foreign policy cannot be without our permission. Foreign affairs are with us. Because the Britishers feared that these Afghanis might deal with Russians, have some friendly relations with Russians, and then attack on us. So they had internal autonomy. But that was also not acceptable to Afghanis, and their king, Amanullah, eventually rose in rebellion, and they did not even want this kind of arrangement also. They wanted full sovereignty. And just after World War I, the Britishers were weak, so Afghanistan won full sovereignty, and well, it is that day that they celebrate as Independence Day. You understand the dynamics. So if we go to the timeline, well, British first fought some Afghan wars, okay, and Treaty of Gandamak was concluded in 1879. As per this, they would have a friendly king in Afghanistan, the British. That king would have internal autonomy except foreign policy. Okay. Then there was another agreement in 1893 called the Durand Agreement to decide the boundary between Afghanistan and British India. Okay. This is this boundary, this red line. But the thing is, this red line is not acceptable to Afghanis because the Pashtun population resides on both sides. They have familial ties. So even today, the Afghanis don't recognize this line. But it became the official line, right? British India and Afghanistan. When India became independent, Pakistan inherited this Durand line. And Afghanis don't accept it. The biggest dispute between Pakistan and Afghanistan is because of this Durand line. Okay. Then third Anglo-Afghan war happened. And well, Amir Amanullah launches offensive for sovereign independence and they become independent. Okay. The final treaty is Treaty of Rawalpindi. Britain recognizes Afghan control over foreign affairs also. Afghanistan becomes completely independent. Now remember, it was August 8th when Britain recognized Afghanistan as completely sovereign. So they should celebrate August 8th as their Independence Day. But no. Amanullah said we will celebrate August 19th because we don't want any date that was dictated by colonial powers. We are that proud Afghanis. So they chose August 19th. That is why August 19 is celebrated as Independence Day. Okay, this is the entire story. Just remember this, that well, initially the British, though technical terms are given in your notes, initially the British thought that they should go for direct control. They couldn't control Afghanistan, they lost a lot. Then they thought of indirect control, which was manageable. They were able to manage it, but only up till 1990. And then Afghanistan became completely independent. Okay, two important treaties, Treaty of Rawalpindi and Sovereign Declaration. Right? Treaty of Rawalpindi was ended active hostilities, ceasefire. Britain formally recognized Afghanistan's right to conduct its own foreign policy. Britain revoked the annual subsidy previously paid to Afghan army. The British India paid some money to the previous Afghan king because Britain controlled their foreign policy. So in exchange, Britain was giving them some money. Okay, that was discontinued. Amanullah Khan proclaimed complete sovereignty, create an independent national narrative distinct from British negotiations, served as a symbol of anti-imperialist triumph for sovereign Asian and Muslim majority nations. So this is the thing, right? That's about it. Now, after independence, King Amanullah was a visionary. So he decided to modernize Afghanistan also, who took various steps. Enacted Afghanistan's first constitution, extended early voting rights to women, opened school for girls and sent female students abroad for higher education. Can you imagine that? Because this is not the reality in today's Afghanistan, but it was back in 1923. Built modern transport, postal and telegraph networks as well as country's first railway line. The backlash was this modernization was too rapid for certain orthodox people in Afghanistan. They objected to it. Rapid modernization triggered conservative and tribal revolts, led by figures Habibullah Kalkani, Bacha Isako, forcing Amanullah abdication of his throne in 1929. So he was a visionary, but he had to, accept defeat from the conservative elements of his society, though this was the case. Now, this Durand Line question is still unresolved because this Durand Line was created by Britishers, okay? And the Amir who signed this Durand Agreement with the British, well, Afghanistan does not recognize them. Afghanistan says this is a colonial thing. We have families in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, that have familial ties, land ties. Okay, this is an artificial line. Historically speaking, Afghanistan says that Afghanistan extends up to Indus River. If Afghanistan extends up to Indus River, so this particular area lies in Afghanistan, not in Pakistan. But Pakistan inherited what was conquered by the British, so Pakistan objects to it. Pakistan says, well, you should accept whatever was done in history was done. You should accept this, okay? And well, there is a dispute between the two. This is the thing. Here, Afghan stand is that, well, since times immemorial, our boundary extended up to Indus. Pakistan says that we should respect legal continuity. What happened in history has happened in history. Okay. So now both sides are fighting. Whenever Pakistan tries to do border fencing or establishing checkposts, well, Afghanis become aggressive and they attack those border fences. So this is a continuous thing with them, right? That's about it. And now let's quickly shift our focus to next news item, and that is why exam cancellations is problematic. Now, you all know that Jharkhand student protests were going on. They have caught national attention, okay? And because of those student pressure, well, Jharkhand government cancelled previous exams. Now, as per those previous exams, some people were selected and they were joining their duty. Now they can't because the exam is cancelled altogether because there were some issues with that. Now, the people who cleared that exam are now hanging in doldrums, right? Therefore, blanket cancellation of exams is not the right approach. And that is why some people approached the Jharkhand High Court, and Jharkhand High Court put a stay order on this cancellation. So, in this topic, we will talk about the pros and cons of this cancellation and how should we manage our examinations, public examinations in a better way, right? So, let's talk about this. So, why exam cancellation is problematic? Here's the issue. Jharkhand government's blanket cancellation of Jharkhand Staff Selection Commission (CGL) and subsequent stay by Jharkhand High Court illustrates a growing governance dilemma in public recruitment across Indian states. Faced with sustained student protests over alleged malpractices, paper leaks, governments are under political pressure, and they are increasingly resorting to blanket cancellation of the exam. Okay, but this is a problem. Okay, why blanket cancellation is a problem? First of all, let's talk about what is the state's rationale. Okay, state governments have gone for blanket cancellation. What is their argument? So they say that it stops these street protests and restores public order, public faith in the system. So we cancel. Okay, so that students have faith in us. It avoids complex individual forensic scrutiny. You see, there was this exam in 2016, let's suppose. Okay, 100 candidates were selected and they have joined service. It was found out later that 10 of these 100 candidates used corrupt means, bribery and all, and they got selected. So these 10 candidates should be removed. But what about the next 90? Now that is a very painstaking job to identify each and every student whether they used malpractices or not. So what do the state governments do? They cancel the entire exam. But don't you think it is unfair for those people who cleared this exam fair and square? But state does not have the resources to check each and every student. So they go for blanket cancellation. Penalizes blacklisted outsourcing agencies. You see, nowadays state governments are outsourcing the logistics of examination to private agencies. Now, Jharkhand says that we have blacklisted these agencies also. Clear? So this is our argument. But what is the counter argument, which the Jharkhand High Court said? It violates the principle of natural justice. How? Okay, these 10 people are guilty if you have found out. But what about the others? Why are you penalizing them? This is against natural justice. Okay. Plus, you have cancelled the entire exam. You have ignored segregating tainted versus innocent candidates. Right? Generates legal uncertainty and fresh counter protests. Now, these students would go for a dharna or protest that why have you cancelled our exam? We were innocent. Plus, it also generates uncertainty. People are always giving these exams with this fear in their mind that maybe our exam would get cancelled in future. There is this fear. Okay, so this is a problem, right? So what have the courts said? Jurisprudential standard. In landmark judgments like Union of India versus Chandrakar or Sachin Kumar, the Supreme Court of India established that blanket cancellation is permissible only when systemic fraud permeates the entire examination process, to an extent that separating honest candidates from fraudulent becomes impractical. If your investigation finds that the entire exam was brutally corrupt, so much so that it is really difficult to find out who are the innocent candidates, then go for cancellation. Otherwise, don't. Where the infection is localized or identifiable through forensic cyber audits, special investigation team probes, the executive has constitutional duty to weed out the tainted, to separate the tainted from innocent. If there is some possibility that you can do this segregation, do it rather than cancelling the exam, because it becomes unfair for other people, innocent people. Right? Makes sense? This is the thing. Now, here's the thing. Here's a comparison. Blanket cancellation, targeted forensic remediation. So if we compare both of them, take a look over here. When it comes to administrative ease, yes, this is easier for administration. This is difficult. This is complicated. But this is better. Impact on innocent appointees. In this case, it has a destructive impact on innocent people. But in this case, it is protective. Judicial sustainability, low, highly susceptible to High Court and Supreme Court stays. When the government does such a thing, blanket cancellation, it is inadvertently challenged. So there is no sustainability, whether your case, whether your order will pass the judicial scrutiny. But this aligns with Supreme Court doctrine, okay? And systemic deterrence, low. Penalizes the student community while masterminds often evade. The masterminds run away and the entire student community gets penalized. In this case, that is not the issue, right? So we should go for targeted forensic remediation, segregate, do proper investigation, find out who are the corrupt candidates, and then cancel their candidature, right? Now the question is, why are public examinations in India prone to heavy corruption and malpractices? There are certain drivers. The crisis in state level examinations is symptomatic of structural socio-economic problems. Number one is employment squeeze. Private sector does not have that many jobs or job security, yet number of youth in India, well, they are on the rise, seeking employment. And they feel that government jobs provides them with adequate security. That is why there is this huge demand for government jobs, huge. Supply is very limited, but demand is very high. This creates some room for criminal entrepreneurs to exploit the system and go for these malpractices. This is the thing. Then third-party outsourcing. Most state examination or state units, well, they have outsourced most of the examination logistics to third-party private players. Now, these private players most of the times are tainted and they are involved in paper leaks. So this is a problem. This should be totally with government control. Examination should be totally with government control. And protracted recruitment cycle. With Jharkhand, this notification came after 8 to 10 years. There is no regular scheduling in state examination. This is a huge problem. Okay, students are just stuck. Okay, most of their important years of their life, they are well spent in preparation only, because the examination is coming after 4 years. It's not like UPSC every year. No, after 4 years, 5 years, this is a problem. So what should be the way forward? Strict enforcement of anti-cheating law, which the government has enacted. Reclaiming public control of exam logistics, no third-party outsourcing. Institutionalizing predictable recruitment calendars, okay? Predictable calendars, do this. This shouldn't be the case that today the notification came out and now the next notification would come out after 4 years, no. Constitutional balance in executive decision making. The executive shouldn't be allowed to do these blanket cancellations, okay? There should be a proper balance. So this is the way forward. That's about it, right? And that would be all. So with that, we conclude today's session. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. Now, it will add more value if you are number one, consistent and regular, and you revise this lecture from the notes. So in the hope that you are precisely going to do that, I shall take your leave with the promise of seeing you again with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.